Hello, and welcome back to ClearCast, the real estate fintech podcast. This is episode 16. This podcast is old enough to drive. I'm Jeff Allen, joined as always by my friend and colleague, Kenon Chen. Kenon, how are you?
Doing good. I am very excited because I'm going on vacation tomorrow.
I was waiting for that. For those who don't know, Kenon has not actually taken a legitimate vacation probably since the pandemic started, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, or since I was 16, I think.
Oh, since you were old enough to drive.
It's been
Kenon
a while.
is notorious for not taking enough vacation, but he is headed to Hawaii with his family next week. Please enjoy.
Thank you. COVID broke me. It broke me.
Well, what better way to send you off to a tropical paradise than to talk with me about real estate?
It's like I'm there already.
We're going to get things started with a very interesting story from the news related to our industry. And that is the world's first real estate NFT, non-fungible token. Kenon, can you explain this to us?
Sure. So blockchain startup Propy, who is actually one of our friend of the pod, one of our earlier guests, they plan to hold the first ever auction of a real apartment as a collectible NFT, which sounds super cool, except I'm not exactly sure what that really means. So, Jeff, I hear you saying smart things about NFTs. What does this actually mean? Like, how do you do this?
Well, as somebody who's read, let's say, 10 articles on NFTs, I feel that I am of deep expertise to share on this subject. No, I am legitimately very curious about blockchain technology and cryptocurrency and DeFi. I think it's going to be growing in importance. And specifically, let's talk about this story, and then we'll talk a little bit about what it means long term. And NFT is a non-fungible token, which is a very cool term that doesn't sound nerdy at all, that describes a unique digital asset. And because it's on the blockchain, so a distributed, decentralized network of computers that kind of collectively agree on truth within the blockchain, it can't be replicated or copied, and it has a unique kind of footprint in the digital blockchain. And so there's a lot of people who've talked for years about how this could have implications for real estate. And what Propy has done, and actually they've successfully done it now, is sold the actual title and ownership of an apartment in Kiev as an NFT. If you go to their website on Propy, they can actually point out that it has been sold for 36 ETH, which I believe is Ethereum cryptocurrency.
Okay. Oh, wow.
And in US dollars, that equates to $93,429. So you may be asking yourself, what would be the point of converting a home to an NFT so that it could be sold as an NFT? And just here's a TechCrunch article talking a little bit about it. The NFT created by Propy will transfer real ownership of the property. Once someone wins the NFT of the apartment at auction, which again did happen, the NFT will include access to the ownership transfer paperwork, a digital artwork NFT by a popular graffiti artist, and the apartment pictures. But the apartment itself, the ownership transfer, is the actual asset here, being enshrined in the digital blockchain.
Wow, it's kind of like the equivalent of writing, cars or boats or whatever into a purchase contract for a property, and you get some artwork here too.
Exactly right. Exactly right. Now, I don't think every NFT of real estate will also include free graffiti art, but that would be a cool side benefit.
Yeah, that's too bad.
The intended benefit is that due to the nature of the smart contract, someone could transfer ownership of the property seamlessly and instantly. There would be no need to record paperwork or go through a standardized process. It would be managed digitally on the smart contract blockchain network. I still don't have my head around directly what this does for consumers. Does it make things less expensive? Does it make things go faster? But there's enough smoke around this subject that it seems like we're going to start hearing more and more about NFTs in real estate and mortgage and decentralized finance, or DeFi, in our space in the years ahead.
Yeah, well, I can't wait for Elon Musk to tweet about it. So this will be great.
If Elon Musk is tweeting about NFTs in real estate, then it will have already been past implementation stage. It's already happening at that point.
Super cool.
Now, onto something far more serious. Are you available to listen to a real estate joke of the pod?
My body will be here.
Okay.
Yes.
Great.
Yes. I will be physically present.
Fantastic. Once again, this is an original joke. So there's this real estate agent, right? And he's got kind of a weird strategy for representing sellers. So get this. In addition to the normal seller's agent stuff that you normally do, like pricing the house right, getting it staged, getting good photos taken, he does this other really weird thing. Like every time, every listing, he sets up an actual, literal movie theater popcorn stand right on the seller's front lawn.
Okay.
That's pretty cool, right?
That's actually, I dig that.
And it's like the real deal. Like there's real popcorn coming out of a popcorn popper. There's hot butter that you could have added or not, depending on your health preferences. Fountain drinks, variety of different fountain drinks, candy, those gross old hot dogs, you know, that are just like rolling on the roller for hours at a time. Little mini pizzas too. All of it on the seller's front lawn. Every listing. Can you believe that?
No.
Well, get this. It's even weirder still, because everything in the movie popcorn stand is actually 4 times bigger than it would be in a normal situation.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can you believe that?
Huh.
The popcorn machine is actually as tall as the roof of the house. Every kernel of popcorn is actually the size of a human's fist. And the Twizzlers are like a tug of war rope made of Twizzlers in this popcorn stand on the front lawn. And here's the really crazy thing. This strategy works. Whenever he represents the seller, the houses sell instantly, like same day, every time.
Before the movie starts or after the movie?
So why would this be so successful?
I can think of a few reasons, but I'm interested to hear why from you.
Well, the buyers are clearly attracted to huge sellers' concessions. You get it?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I do.
Okay. Cool. It's like a concession stand from a popcorn movie theater, but they're huge.
Huge.
Very attractive sellers' concessions. Very large.
4 times as big concessions.
4 times.
4
Literally,
times.
actually, to scale 4x.
I just had a visual of these huge popcorn kernels and just what sort of food fight that would look like as you're just throwing.
Oh, the mayhem, the bruises, the scrapes. You can't even get your mouth around the kernel when you're trying to eat it. It's actually uncomfortable.
I would go to the open house even if I'm not in the market.
Well, Kenan, thank you for humoring me yet again.
I thought you were going to do something around it being because it's outside, like a
Mm.
movie house, but an open movie house. I thought you're gonna go that direction.
Oh,
You took a
that's not
different
very funny.
turn. Yeah.
That's not very funny.
It's not, sorry, I should, you know, it's not my job to make others suffer through the jokes. Well, today we're joined by a special guest that we're excited about. We're joined by Raf Howery, who is the founder and CEO of Kukun. And this is actually a company that I've been paying attention to for quite a while because I think they have a super interesting value prop. But Raf he's a seasoned entrepreneur. This is not his first go around. He has background in technology and strategy, data science, solutioning, and product management. And he founded Kukun in March of 2014 after a career at Capgemini. So super excited to hear more about Kukun, and we welcome you to the pod.
Thanks, Kenon. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So, so we want to learn a little bit more about Kukun. I mean, tell us, really what the vision is, when you founded it, what you do, who's your customers, how do you guys create value?
Sure. So the initial kind of founding vision was I had just finished renovating my second home, and I couldn't help it but to see that on my second home that I've learned new skills from my first one. And I started to become unwantingly an expert amongst my friends. So people will start to ask, and also it hit me as someone who comes from a background in technology and digitization, is that this market is completely offline. And I was really intrigued as to why no one has really looked at it. Because on the surface, it looks relatively simple. After some research, I recognize that people nibble at the edges. You can find a contractor, so you have those big kind of contractor directory companies, but nobody has kind of fixed the plague that has sort of been present in this market, which is it's completely opaque, right? Nobody really knows what things should cost, how long it takes, who is the right professional, what should I look for in a professional, what are those pitfalls. And as a result, I think it created a lot of phobia in a lot of people's minds, leaving their homes sort of untouched for a long time, thus diminishing the value of their home because of this fear. And so my initial thought, well, can we do to kind of bring some things to the surface? I should remove some of, at least one or two layers of that opacity. And spent quite a few, since I come from management consulting, done like a typical strategy job, and basically figured out a customer journey. I went through my personal journey and tried to put on a piece of paper and recognize there are really six big macro things. You research, you budget, you hire, maybe you borrow, maybe you don't. You try to manage time and money, and you shop. Pretty much that's kind of the highest level, right? And so I started by saying, well, why can't I at least reveal what things should cost? Why should I go into a project not having some sort of a budget in mind? Why do I have to call someone if I'm buying a house and I know that it needs work? Why shouldn't I know that budget upfront? And so we launched our first product, the cost estimator, which looked deceivingly simple, but actually to make it user friendly, make it user approachable, should we say, was not a very simple task. And it took about a good year to understand the consumer that's using it, where you give them answers that are relevant enough to their questions without boring them, without making them spend too much time on that journey. And that was a long learning experience. And that was kind of the initial thought. That was our initial product, which realtors were our biggest fans in the beginning because they were using it to answer their clients. So that was my first kind of taker. We went and used SEO to see what the consumer market did, and that was quite a successful. From there, I started to look at the rest of the steps pretty much. along the way, we recognize that a lot of the answers require a lot of data and analytics to bring to the consumer. And so that's when we decided to look at things such as what is the ROI on a renovation? And, there's a lot of people claim to have an ROI, but as we all know, they are just survey based. And so there's no science behind them. Um, the idea was, okay, can we focus on flipped homes? Maybe if we figure out what was the original cost, what was the sales cost, what was the construction, what is the scope of the construction, and the cost of that, maybe I can extract what this project has added to the final value. I'm simplifying this, as you would imagine from an analytics perspective, but at least the gist of the story, right?
Yeah.
And this is when we recognized we needed construction data, and we needed the permit data in particular, because that was the only way we can get from the data that's out there homes that were bought and sold within a year, for example, right? So that tells you this home has potentially been flipped. And then we would match it with a permit. If we find a match, bingo, you have your base set of the data that will do the ROI. And so that was our adventure into going into the permit data, because when we looked at the market, we couldn't see the right level of granularity for the permit data that would allow us to figure out what actually happened to that house. Because as you know, the intelligence is mostly in some sort of a description field. So natural language was really important to get to that point.
Yeah.
And that took us into this big permit data, which from there we started to use all this permit data to create tools. So we started to create tool, like background of a contractor. Every permit, they have their name on it. What did they do? If we found a pattern and trend as to, well, they seem to specialize in kitchen or specialize in projects between $5,000 to $20,000, or they only do like $500,000 projects or what have you. And so that was one of those tools we started to build. And basically that's how we grew. And then eventually we started to see financial institutions reaching out to us and saying, can I have a version of your software on my site so I can generate leads for myself for, whether it's a home equity loan or a personal loan or what have you. So that's sort of the genesis from here to there kind of thing of what we've tried to do so far.
Yeah, and it's interesting. You talk about kind of the depth of all the data that you guys are processing. It sounds like it's fairly complex. Sounds like there's natural language processing. There's all this like really complicated back-end big data stuff that you're doing.
That's correct.
But then you also referenced before that really the value, a lot of what you're creating is in presenting it in a consumer-friendly, simple way.
Correct. Yes.
And it's hard to do that transition sometimes from the complicated back-end data to the simple front end. And I'd encourage our listeners to check out mykukun.com, KUKUN, to get a sense for how simply it is visualized. Some of this stuff really is presented in a very intuitive way, which leads me to this question. We were looking around at different articles about Kukun recently, and actually a reviewer on your website called you the Zillow for home remodeling, which I thought was a pretty telling phrase, because it kind of gets across that you guys are sort of this consumer version of this very non-consumer friendly question of the cost of renovation. Do you feel like that's what you're trying to be, is sort of the Zillow of home remodeling? And do you see that being part of your strategy?
I would say that I mean, that's a great compliment. I would say instead of home renovation, I'd say home ownership. Because there's more to your ownership. Maintenance is not renovation, but it's an essential part in maintaining the value of your home. And so we've, if you've seen on our website, we've launched this maintenance tool under Manage My Home, right? Where we take a look at your home. We look at the background of your home, right? How old it is, where it is, how big it is, and the climate it lives in, and we automatically create a set of maintenance tasks that allow you to control that. What we're trying to do is to link the condition of your home to its value, just like you do with a car. When you sell a car with a maintenance record, it's going to have a better value than without it. And so the idea is that most of us homeowners don't understand it as a financial instrument. We see it as our home. It's more of an emotional kind of prospect. But it is not, at the end of the day, it's probably the largest investment of most of us. And most of us don't understand what drives its value up and what drives it down. Some of it is beyond our control. Like if I live in a neighborhood that happens to be lucky to have Facebook, launch a site next to me, well, that's without my control. But there are some things you can control, which is your home value when you sell it is determined by how well maintained it is and how up to date it is. If you don't know that, you are going to be surprised when you try to refinance your home. I mean, how many of us went onto Zillow and saw the value of our homes, and then a realtor looks at us and says, no, your home is about 3/4 of what Zillow says. Well, that's because, Zillow doesn't know that you either doesn't know that you've maintained it, or it doesn't maintain. So it's making some assumptions about your home. We're trying to divulge that to some extent to homeowners so they understand ownership, and renovation is just the biggest ticket item in that. It's not the only thing, but it's the biggest ticket item. And let's face it, a small percentage of homes get remodeled every 10 years. It's not, 10 to 20% is probably what we think it is at the end of the day. Now, over the lifetime of a house, the percentage goes much higher.
So over this past year, of course, with COVID, I mean, we've had, I believe, a record year in remodeling activity over the past year, and then we've also seen, a shortage of supplies and incredible, rising costs. I think those have started to die down a little bit, but when you think about managing that data set that you have and trying to translate all those things into a cost for a homeowner, what was that like? Have you found that you have to do anything different to account for some of the craziness of the past year?
Well, I have to say, the first 6 months, we sort of like, we were watching, right? We didn't know how long these things last. And I assuming you're referring mostly to lumber prices, and you've seen the news now, it has dropped down. So we tried to give the market some time to adjust. I think the issue is not just material, it's also labor. There's a major shortage of labor. So you could see in a number of permits that, projects are slower to process. How crazy it was, I think not that much, because most of what has changed in terms of material is foundational material like lumber. So it's just one element. Really, the biggest impact is the availability of labor, because the lack of availability, as you would know, would drive the prices up too. And that's very hard to measure until after the fact, pretty much. But one of the things that we have built over the years is a connection to a lot of contractors in the marketplace. And so we're constantly asking and trying to get feedback. And the answer is really inconsistent. The impact is very different in an area like the Bay Area versus, somewhere like even Florida, right? It's also, I think, areas where it's quite, let's just say, like the Bay Area or California, which tends to be much more regulated, let's say, compared to, let's just say, Florida. You'll see a very, we see in Florida, for example, much more unpermitted work than we see here, right? Here it's very hard to get away with it in the Bay Area, as you'd imagine. There it's quite easy. And so it's been crazy. But we rely a lot on two things. First, we do monitor all the basic material that are, foundational to the industry. And then we look at, we talk to the contractors in the market and try to kind of make sense out of both.
So now, it sounds like you guys are keeping a close eye on things pretty consistently. So we'll kind of, to close out our discussion today, what do you think post-COVID world looks like for remodeling? Is the frenzy going to die down? Is the labor supply going to, bounce back? What do you think the future holds?
Well, I think there are two things. I don't think it'll subside. It'll grow because I think our homes will turn into our workplace too, right? Even
Mm.
after we go back to work, I think we're never going to look at a house as 3 bedroom, 2 bathroom. It'll be 3 bedroom, 2 bathroom, one office. That's going to be the way we describe a home in the future.
Yeah.
It's going to be, even if half of us go back, right? It's a much more accepted norm of operation right now by the corporations. It's probably even economically better for most corporations to actually do a hybrid model. So we will see more of that as we go. The biggest issue that worries me, honestly, is the shortage of labor. We've done an analysis using the permit data where we start to look at the number of new contractors entering the market versus the number of contractors leaving the market. And the way we looked at that is folks have been kind of getting 2-3 permits a year, and suddenly they drop off and you see nothing for like a year or two. We kind of figured out they probably moved, or they stopped or retired. And the number of folks entering the market is significantly less than the ones that are leaving the market. And I think there are two issues. There are potentially two reasons for that. One is, I think, still the construction industry is still offline, and the new generation is all computer savvy and literate, and they're expecting better tools. They don't want to get their hands dirty. And I think that's going to be a problem that needs to be fixed. I know there's a lot of construction tech kind of being built right now, but I don't think we're very close to solving that problem. So I expect a big problem with that in the near term until the technology sector catches up and makes it cool again for the new generation to enter that industry. So that's really the one that worries me the most. And we see it every single day. I think the biggest reason for shortage of labor is not just the amount of work, it's the lack of folks. The other phenomena we see is that a lot of what, if you look 10 years ago, the contractors that were doing most of the work were folks who probably never used a computer in the past. And so they've depended a lot more on the sort of their references. While with the invention of the internet, and specifically those ideas like House, where you have, as a contractor, to kind of grow, you have to know how to do marketing. And let's face it, a lot of those folks did not grow up in an environment that knows how to do that. So I think some of those folks either left the market or became subcontractors because the flow of the work starts to drop. Right? And I've talked to a number of one, and I know one guy that I worked with for 10 years, and he ended up working as a subcontractor because he just doesn't know how to market his services anymore. Oh. Which is sad, but it's the reality of today, right? And so I think labor shortage is going to be the biggest issue in the near future. And if I were to spend my energy, I already have my Kukun, so I don't have. If I had to, I'd be solving that problem, because I think the problem is going to blow up every time in the next 2-3 years.
It's wild to think of, that happening all with on the other end of the scale is, HGTV with, fix and flip, seeing there's such an interest in that. But yet you're seeing, not as many people come into, being contractors. So that's super interesting.
It is, and lay on top of that, if we have a big infrastructure bill, that's going to take a lot of people into big public projects, right? And so that could only complicate the issue.
Yeah. Wow. Well, great trends to watch, and definitely, great to watch my Kukun as you guys move forward, and really appreciate the time.
I appreciate it. Thank you, Bill. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak to you guys.